All right, hello everybody. This is gonna be a new series I'm doing on my channel where rather than just uploading completions of levels, I'm gonna try to upload some reviews, share my thoughts on them in general. This series is inspired primarily by YakobNugget's legit level review series and Anthony Fantano's music reviews, where he reviews albums, songs. Um, I just thought it could be a fun way to shake things up. I was kind of bored, so we'll try it out, see how it goes. Okay, so let's get right into it. Aku is an extreme demon released in mid 2.1 by neigefeu. He's a well-known modern creator. He creates modernistic levels, and Aku is one of them. It's generally considered to be one of the easier extreme demons, one of the easiest ones, in fact. I'd agree with that fully. It's definitely the easiest extreme demon I've personally done, and I think it's a great entry extreme. Like if you're first starting off with extreme demons, you've done a couple harder insane ones. This is a good idea to start off your journey into extreme demons. So starting off, we're going to talk about the gameplay a little bit. The gameplay in this level is, I'd say, one of its strongest points. It's very consistent from what I found. It's enjoyable and flows super well. The difficulty remains very consistent throughout the level with a few choke points. There are a couple, such as I found personally for me, 64%. There's this one dash orb that I found myself constantly dying to from clicking too early, and there's another part at 72, which is just kind of a rough transition out of the mini wave into a buffer click. I found it kind of awkward and found myself dying there sometimes, but just small parts like that aren't a huge deduction in the terms of quality of gameplay in the level. Of course, it is an extreme demon, so you're going to expect some difficulty, but overall, it's very consistent throughout. There's no part I would say really carries the level's difficulty. I think the pre-drops gameplay is quite solid. It's a little slow, but overall, it syncs well to the music, as does the entire level, and it really gives a good introduction to the beginning of the level. Like, for example, the beginning starts off with a mini section where it goes through primarily mini cube, some other mini game modes like ball, and then transitions into a big cube section leading up to the drop as the music builds. I find it flows super well like that. Again, it's for the most part fairly well click synced as well. There's a lot of click sync where individual clicks will sync to beats, which is always something nice in a level, but it's not overdone to the point where it's, you know, deducting from the quality of the gameplay. Like there are times where the gameplay will diverge from the music and won't perfectly sync to every click, and I think that's a good thing. Levels sometimes will try too hard to be click synced perfectly, and it overall ends up being kind of clunky, awkward gameplay. I don't think Aku suffers from this at all. However, it's very well put together and goes along with the music all the way through. Moving on to the drop, we have some nice fast-paced gameplay. Again, flows with the music, and it's satisfying, consistent gameplay is what you're really looking at here. Frequent game mode changes, frequent speed changes, things like that. Lots of orb-based gameplay, which some may say is overused. I don't think it's too bad. There are certainly a lot of orbs. However, I think overall it's not too bad. There are quite a bit of variability in the gameplay. Notably, there are some spider parts that are unique. There's lots of cube gameplay, which I'm a personal fan of. And something that we don't see in a lot of extreme demons nowadays is a noticeable lack of wave gameplay. There are very few waves in the level, and the ones that there are I found to be very consistent and not very difficult. So it's interesting to see levels that aren't primarily focused on waves, as so many extreme demons are nowadays. And then we get towards the middle point of the drop where there's an interesting duel section. I think it flows super well. It's very solid there. Some fun gameplay. I found it very enjoyable and with few choke points. And then we get kind of towards the later half of the drop where I found the gameplay is still pretty good, but there were some choke points I mentioned previously. Um, they aren't too bad. Obviously, I think the level wouldn't be nearly as hard without them. And so if it were, this might be just an insane demon and might not be the difficulty it was aimed to be. So they're kind of necessary, but also I think they could have been done a little bit better, just with some awkward transitions and just weird clicks. But Overall, the gameplay there isn't too bad. It's very fast paced, lots of 4 times speed parts, sorry, and lots of varied gameplay as we've seen before, and it's overall pretty fun and flows very well there. And then we get towards the end where we have primarily some cube and some robot, a UFO section in there with just the last 15-ish% of the level. It's actually fairly difficult, this section. It got very consistent for me. I did die there, I think twice from zero, so it wasn't too bad. I found once you learned how to do it correctly, it got very consistent, and most of the deaths were probably just me being a bit nervous. But overall, gameplay all the way through, very fun, consistent, and enjoyable. I'd say it's definitely one of the strongest points of Aku and makes it such a great entry extreme. There's no, really hard sections. There's no section I can point to and say, like, yeah, this is not accessible for newer players. Moving on to the decoration, Aku is obviously a modern styled level. It's very simplistic with its designs. There's nothing too detailed. It's mostly just simple colors, big objects, things like that. Not too many detailed designs, but it looks super nice. It's very visually appealing, which is obviously something you're looking for. I will say that the color palette used in Aku is very pleasing and well put together. It's mostly of a pastel sort of color palette, some light colors mixed in with the black objects that are frequently seen, but it's a very colorful level in general. It has some interesting fade effects on some blocks where it's not just a solid color, but it kind of has like a fade between two, a gradient. It looks very nice in a lot of cases, and I think it's a very nice addition to mix up the block design a little bit. I will say that one of the things this level suffers from, mainly decoration wise, is it looks very similar throughout most of the level. There are some small changes throughout, like for example in the beginning it's darker, and then as we enter the big cube section before the drop, it becomes lighter and some different effects come in, some new colors, which is interesting. However, the block designs themselves don't change up too much throughout the level, and I think that mostly just has to do with the fact that it's of the modern style. It's a rather limiting style. There's only so much you can really do with it. I do think it could have been done better even in this style, however, though. If you look at two screenshots from, just completely different parts in the level, they'll look very similar, which is nice in some ways. However, I think it would have been interesting and better if he changed it up a little more. I think I've seen him do more with this. For example, in his level past, I've seen he pushes a lot of boundaries in that, and while it's still a modern level, he tries out a lot of new things, and it doesn't look so similar all the way through like it does here in Aku. That being said, the decoration looking very similar all the way through isn't all bad. It does make the level seem not very disconnected. It seems very nicely put together. It seems like one uniform level, unlike some other levels you might see, especially a common victim of this is mega collabs. They will have parts that look nothing like each other, and it kind of just looks like a bunch of random parts squashed together. That could definitely not be said about Aku. As for the effects, I think there are some very interesting background effects throughout the level. I particularly enjoy the one that looks like a wave, where it kind of goes up and down. That one's very cool. It looks very visually appealing, and it moves very nicely, has some nice movement. However, there are some backgrounds that are rather plain, just some like shapes in the background that I think he could have done more with to make it look more dynamic and really set the parts apart from each other. The effects within the level themselves, though, like not background, are fairly unique. There are some cool kind of laser looking ones that look pretty cool. I think they provide some interesting dynamic to the level, and I find that there are some cool foreground effects like some stars flashing, some circles that kind of add some nice things. But again, I think more could have been done to really separate parts apart from each other. That's really the crux of my argument, is that it's very similar throughout the entire level. There's not too many memorable particular sections decoration wise. It just all kind of looks pretty nice but similar throughout the entire level. I think the way the objects are structured is very satisfying, and sometimes there's some interesting curvature to some blocks, some cool, the way the structuring is just looks kind of cool in some parts and unique. However, there are some block designs that I have some problems with, like a lot of the saws look almost identical to each other, which they probably are. Obviously, it's a lot of work to create a lot of different saw designs, but I think one or two more different saw designs could have added some more variability to the level. They all just kind of have this similar thing where it's a circle and then a slightly bigger quarter circle. It's all pretty similar, but again, there could have been more done with the block designs, and I think Aku also does somewhat lack some theming. There's no real general direction with the level. It's just modern, which, I mean, that's okay in and of itself, but sometimes it's nice to have within a level, you know, a kind of theme or a story of some kind where it's centered around something, where, as in this, it just kind of seems modern is the theme, which again isn't necessarily bad, but I think you could have done more with it. Overall, to summarize Aku, it is a great level for what it is. It's a modern entry extreme demon that is very consistent all the way through. That's really the word that sums up Aku the best, is consistent. The gameplay really shines in this way. I find there's not that many really bad parts of gameplay. The quality of the gameplay is very high throughout the entire level, as well as the difficulty. It's very consistent throughout the entire level. The decoration, again, is also consistent throughout the level, however, not in such a great way, I'd say. It does make the level seem very nice and put together, but it also makes it so that I remember the whole level as a whole. It's very memorable, like, as a level, but there's no specific parts of it that stand out to me. Just the whole idea of the level itself is what really is memorable to me. Obviously, it's a very popular level, and I can definitely see why. It's super fun. I had a great time playing it. One of my most enjoyed extreme demons for sure, and it's easy to get into, right? For extreme demons, obviously people want to say they beat their first extreme, so they flock to the easier ones to try them out, and I think this is a great place to go for that. That's why so many people have done it as their first extreme. I'm feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this level. Alright, so that is it for the review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave your thoughts down in the comments, and feel free to suggest me other levels to review. I'm not sure how consistently I'm going to be doing this series, but I found this video pretty fun to make. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. And I keep in mind, I'm only going to review levels that I've actually beaten, so don't suggest me anything too hard. I'm not going to be reviewing VSC anytime soon, but if you have some easier levels, easy extremes, maybe extended list at the highest, feel free to suggest them down below and I will review them, or at least try to. Anyway, peace out, guys.